because that's where I have most photos from. This Chilka is a small lagoon and it is intensely fished by a range of types of fisheries, and there is this critically endangered population of Irrawaddy dolphins. It is also a highly productive lagoon, a highly productive lagoon when it comes to a variety of fish and prawns and crabs and everything. So this is the idea, an idea of a small system. And if you see, there is farming also going on. The buffaloes there also. These are the kind of systems one would endeavor for, whether it is small coastal stretches. Of course, we'll go into the policy implications of all these things when you'll ask questions. It's not that easy to stop. Even if one community or one village along a coast says that we want to sustainably manage, conserve fish in this area, it's not always possible because in our country everyone can fish it. But I look at Chilka as this perfect little place, at least those days, where everything was happening. And illegal stuff was also happening, but still, for some reason, the system sustained itself. And I do feel sometimes that a key species like Irrawaddy dolphins or the sharks that come in, Chilka used to have a lot of sharks also at that time, do play a key role in sustaining these kind of ecosystems. So here's the bigger picture that I wanted to go deeper into, but have not been able to in the presentation, is everybody needs to think from local to planetary and back. Like whatever happens locally is affecting something somewhere. And this is really for lay people. I'm not talking to any ecologists here. I'm sure they already know this. That spaces, you look at spaces, you look at habitats, mix of habitat forming matrices, and then biomes. And then these biomes are connected to each other geochemically, biochemically, by biomass. And so we populations of species, communities that intermingle and form ecosystems again. And then everything that's interacting with each other. And so when I talk about aquatic systems, I don't talk only about marine systems at all. I talk about starting from things like freshwater, groundwater tables forming lakes and ponds, and rivers merging, estuaries, mangroves. All these things are interconnected, and that's why one of the main arguments against dams also is that you should not be blocking rivers going into the sea, because that's what brings nutrients into the coastal stretches for where your fish nursery grounds are. So just a quick thing is that every time one sees or looks at a system, you cannot look at it in an isolated way. Always think about one thing being connected to another. Your seagrass beds, and we are in the middle of climate change, and everybody's talking about reforesting. But really, the best carbon sequesters are in the oceans. Seagrass beds are one of the best places of carbon sequestration. Even deltas. I think the entire muddy substrate of the fan of Bay of Bengal is supposed to be one of the best carbon sequesters. So these are things that people don't even talk about when they go for COP26 kind of things, I think. And then coming to species, because I'm talking about marine megafauna, I'm bringing this up. I'm not going into the little bugs that are really important. I'll show you. We'll end up with the little bugs at the end of my presentation. So I'm not going to go into this, but we're talking about megafauna like sharks, rays, offshore birds, turtles, which Murali will cover, sea snakes. Sea snakes are rarely talked about in our conservation discussions. Mammals, otters, fishing cats, and then of course dolphins, whales, and dugongs. So dolphins are found in rivers also, lagoons also, and the whales are offshore. So there is certain habitat. I might have that poster somewhere. And so why should we manage or conserve any of these habitat species or because that's interconnected. If you take a species, it's not like the ecosystem will stay the same. That's connected to this. Should we utilize most of these resources? There's a whole range of stakeholders, starting from a small-scale fisherman or an Adivasi living and from the coastal stretch to commercial fisheries and shipping. It's all across the spectrum using these resources. This side it's one or two habitats or species at that level up there, okay, to take it down and up the interconnected system. I think we are seeing maturity because I think we've all know about shifting baselines and reef ecology and in forests, right? So, but then we have to be ready for it if we are doing some drastic changes. I explained this also that each one has a role, and of course, human well-being, both livelihoods and mental. People don't talk about mental health and nature as much, and wild species or experiencing wild areas and wild species, but I think it's a very, very important aspect of today's lives. So just a quick picture of marine ecosystems or aquatic ecosystems as I'm talking about is there's open ocean and then there's mangroves, there's bays and lagoons and deltas and places where rivers enter the sea. This is just taking you to this is some slides I had taken from Vardhan a long time ago when we went to conference. So this is just people are looking at water, but there's lots of stuff in there. And you're looking at a space, but it's actually full of life, right? So the way we see things and observe things really needs to change if we want to go into conservation. That we are aware of the fact that there are large ecosystems like this one, as you can see, that people are voicing to be protected, okay, from overfishing and from shipping and from naval exercises. Simply because these are areas where oceanic currents are merging, blooms happen, and these are the Arabian Sea especially is very, very rich compared to the Bay of Bengal. So this is a EPSA in the Bay of Bengal. As you can see, it's almost all of our area. And then we recently have done a similar exercise for marine mammals, which you will see is a lot more condensed because we don't have enough data. But as you'll see, most of the areas along India are already on the either an important marine mammal area or to be in the future becoming important. So all the yellow ones are already on the World Atlas. The blue ones are waiting for more information. And the red ones are in the pipeline for, hopefully you will be able to put them later on. So there are these kind of processes. I've only shown you all two, which are highlighting oceanic areas where biodiversity needs to be conserved or is being. Now this is my thing, and so I'll give a bit more time to this. As you'll see in this poster, these are all whales and dolphins found along the coast of India. And the way this poster has been arranged is showing you distribution of species in their particular habitat preference. So its depth profiles or its nutrients or its prey, whatever it is. Over time, they have arranged themselves in the oceans in this manner. The deepest diving waves are on the right, the beach whales are on the right side of the poster. And all your coastal species are close to shore, the dugongs and the seagrass bed, and so on and so forth. There are certain species that are found both coastally, the large whales come close to shore this time of the year, and are found in deeper waters offshore when the sardines are no more or anchovies are no more. So this is just looking at this particular group of megafauna and why are they important. Okay? Why is all marine megafauna important? But I'm talking mainly about whales and large whales now and dolphins. So like in the forest, we know what tigers do and lions do and deers do and the relationship between tigers and deers to the forest floor. Similarly, the same things are happening in the sea. There is a maintenance and balance in the abundance of these creatures at different levels because we won't talk about the marine whales, but we know that the sperm whales and the killer whales hunt smaller, like the sperm whales will take squid or larger squid, while the killer whales will take smaller dolphins. And similarly, other kind of killer whales and other kind of toothed whales are eating smaller species. So this is what the same thing that happens in the forest is happening. The dynamics are happening even in the ocean. And so it's all connected to biomass. Whale poop, as all of you know, it gives these, people don't talk about this enough, but it is one of the best sources of nutrients in the sea. There are papers written on this. I have not been able to put the literature in here. but there is like a burst of nutrient plumes in areas where whales gather, and these are usually in cold water areas, and then with the currents they're moving all over the ocean, right? So both excreta and urine affect locally, regionally, and across the oceans. I'll go into this a bit more later, I think. And one of my favorite subjects is whale fall, as we call it. More than 80% of whales, when they die, whales or dolphins, when they die, they actually sink. They don't come to shore like we know when we see them. And these actually provide really rich habitats, food and niches and small spaces for life to start again. It's like putting an artificial reef or a fish aggregation device in the water, but it's a natural one. And so there are experiments going on right now where people have gone and artificially, like they put weights on whales and they put them down at the bottom, and they go and check them every few intervals of time to see how things have changed around the whale. So that is a very important source of biodiversity and almost like a new life being produced in that ocean floor. I'll show you some photos, not of whale poop that you may have seen enough of. But what does it do? So basically, it fertilizes the ocean surface waters with key nutrients that move through the food chain and then onto land. How onto land? Through fish and birds, right? Through everything that moves from the sea to the land, these nutrients are ultimately flowing into the planetary cycle. So nutrients like phosphorus, they are taken up by phytoplankton and algae. That in turn is consumed by zooplankton, copepods, krill, and these are then fed on by so many other organisms. Now that is a beautiful illustration. It's from the New Yorker, the magazine New Yorker. That is your whale sitting on the ocean floor. Almost the skeleton will stay down there for almost 30 to 40 years, depending on what has started feeding on it. So people have documented from the beginning till almost powder, the whale bones becoming powder and settling into the ground. But as you'll see over here also, there's so much diversity being produced just around this one whale skeleton. There's another picture which is a real one. This is the real picture of the whale skeleton. You can see all the little bugs all around, little crabs and soft coral and all of that growing. So this decaying whale carcass, as you can read it yourself, is a sort of biodiversity generator. It's allowing organisms from different energy-rich seafloor oases such as thermal vents and methane seeps also to mingle. And the importance of deep sea ecosystems is very, very important because that's where all our source populations are. Even if we get new species, that's where they're going to come from. And so this whole thing about deep sea fishing and exploring that last frontier that we have for our oceans is a very, very scary idea that the government is currently pushing for. So, so this greenhouse gas, which is being consumed by the microbes and provides biomass, that ultimately is sustaining the fish populations that we sadly want to overfish. So that was where I was going to end and hope for more questions. Just to bring us back to the fact that marine megafauna plays a very, very key role, and we require it in the oceans if we want to sustain fisheries in the long term. And that is it.
Cool. Thanks for the presentation, Dipani. And should we go with the questions now, or should we go with the questions after Murali completes his presentation?
Later. Let me watch Murali. Now that you me.
Yeah.
So, hi everyone. So Murali is the field director of their flagship species conservation projects in Dakshin Foundation. So let's welcome Murali for his presentation on turtles. Hi Murali, please carry on with your presentation.
Yeah. Just let me know if the screen is visible. Yeah. Are you able to see the entire screen of the presentation?
You need to make it big, no? The presentation is there. The full view आता है नहीं आता है Google में.
हाँ वही like.
Murali, did you turn it off again? I can't see it.
Yeah. Now can you see it in full screen?
Yes.
Yeah, now we can.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks Pranav for the invitation, and it's great to follow that talk given by Dipani, which gave a broad understanding of ocean systems and everything. My talk is going to be a little bit more focused on the work that I've been doing uh, with Dakshin, which is monitoring sea turtles primarily, where I started out most of my work, and other flagship marine species along the coast, and some of the learnings from the ecology and the challenges that we face in conservation. Now, a marine flagship species can be anything that can describe an iconic species of a region. This could be turtles, sharks, rays, sea snakes, and they're studied through a variety of techniques, including like in-water research, or in most cases, it is on the shore at beaches or at landing centers. Most of our work has focused in these geographies where we do have large aggregations of some of these iconic species, like the mass nesting of olive ridleys in Orissa, the leatherback turtles that nest in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, the green turtles, which have a large foraging group in the Lakshadweep Islands, and a small bit of work that we looked at the interactions with fisheries on sea snakes and sharks and rays in Malwan. I'm going to start with the place that I've also been associated the most, um, which is Orissa. And this is one of the most iconic events, wildlife events that happens globally. This is the mass nesting of olive ridley sea turtles, which happens in two nesting beaches in Orissa, which is at Gahirmata and Rishikulya. And Rishikulya is where we've been conducting our work since 2008. And this phenomenon of mass nesting, where several hundreds and thousands of turtles nest in mass, happens just in a few sites globally. Most of them are located in Central and South America, most famously in Costa Rica and Mexico, with smaller nesting sites in Panama and other regions which are still being discovered. There's a small nesting event that happens in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands as well, but not at the same scales. Um, Now, the olive ridleys are the most common species of sea turtles found on the Indian coast. They nest extensively all across the mainland coast and the islands. There are large nesting grounds in the coast of Andhra as well, most famously the Hope Island and Sacramento nesting beaches. Though there are large nesting grounds even at Vishakhapatnam, Nellore, and Kakinada. Now, these turtles, before they arrive to nest, aggregate in large numbers in the nearshore waters in front of the nesting beach. This shows the patterns of the aggregation. And this is very important to understand because this is also a region which is used by a lot of fishermen for their fishing activities. Now, most olive ridley aggregation sites are very close to river mouths, and river mouths are also highly nutrient rich waters, which also sees aggregations of several fish species. Now, the breeding season of turtles also coincides with the peak fishing season for most of the fishers in that region. And this has been a point of conflict historically in Orissa about demarcating um, these aggregation areas and trying to allow what type of fisheries in what season. Currently, uh, currently what is seen is there is an almost 7 month ban on fisheries at dense aggregation sites. But the conflict primarily over here is with intensive mechanized fishing, though in many cases the targeted communities are the traditional small scale fishers. Now, we've been studying these aggregation patterns in the offshore waters at Rishikulya over the last 10 years, and we do see specific patterns of emerging out of it, where just post migration, when they come to the coast of Orissa, um, in November, December, you see a far more widespread and loose aggregation across the coast of Rishikulya. But as you move closer into the nesting season or just before the Aribada, these aggregations become a lot more dense and come closer to the shore. Now, this information is very important to study understand these aggregation patterns because this helps us demarcate regions which can be set aside uh, for from fishing activities because in fact even fishing in these regions can cause a lot of damage to the fishing gear themselves. Um, and through detailed understanding of these patterns we can get a better idea of when and where to have these kind of protection measures, and it doesn't need to be a constant kind of boundary that needs to be set aside for the protection of these animals. And one of the good ways to understand and monitor the health of this population is to understand the numbers that nest. This gives a good metric of how many turtles are there and how healthy the population is. Now, as you can see at Rishikulya, we have been recording nesting numbers ranging all the way from 14,000 turtles to almost 4 lakh turtles nesting during a particular season. Now, this trend, if you compare it to what has been seen historically, seems to indicate that the Ridley nesting population or the mass nesting population in Orissa is stabilizing or in most cases increasing, even though there is another mass nesting site at Gahirmata which is not monitored at this scale, which is primarily because it's a protected area and the management is completely dependent on the forest department. We've also been monitoring some vital parameters of the population, such as looking at next temperatures and sex ratios, because we are all concerned with the impacts of increasing temperatures. Turtles specifically, turtles and many other species are specifically more in threat because their sex ratios are dependent on the temperatures at which they incubate. So higher temperatures will give rise to more number of females, whereas lower temperatures give rise to more number of males. Now, as you can see, we've had fluctuating temperature regimes uh, across all years, and it is evident in the kind of sex ratios that we're seeing of hatchlings that emerge out as well. At the moment, it seems to be a cyclical pattern of sorts, where there are a few years where you see more number of females being produced, but there is still years where you get a lot of males being produced. Now, future implications of increasing temperatures is what we need to worry about and see how it would impact the ratios that we see in the wild right now. Now, the leatherback turtle is the other species that we've been monitoring. It's the largest sea turtle species in the world. Currently, it is known to nest only in the Andaman Nicobar group of islands on the Indian uh, territory, though there have been stray records of turtles being seen in different parts of the mainland coast as well. And most recently, one was recorded off the coast of Tamil Nadu. Uh, and these have been recorded in the past in different parts of the mainland coast, but their numbers are at much lesser densities than the olive ridleys. Uh, we have been tagging individual turtles over the last decade, and over the last decade, we've actually managed to tag only a few hundred individuals. So this seems to indicate that the numbers of leatherbacks are comparison to the encounters seem to be stable over the years and is comparable to challenge with the leatherback turtles are that there are much far away are the Bay of Bengal, where was nesting in Orissa, they migrate to the offshore waters of Lanka, Humps, are largely pelagic within the Bay of Bengal region. But further back has such far and wide migratory patterns that some individuals reach all the way also reach the coast of Australia. So the challenges that trying to manage species that migrate such are very different from what you see always. And finally, the other very interesting species is the green turtle, which primarily nests only in the island groups of Lakshadweep and Andaman and Nicobar Islands, but also an important nesting grounds off the coast of Gujarat. Though you do see stray juvenile birds from different parts of the coast, all the region are restricted within the islands of Lakshadweep, where increasing numbers of turtles over the last 2 decades has caused a severe decline in habitat quality uh, because these turtles are herbivorous and have increased in numbers that they have caused a severe decline in seagrass cover in that region. And this over time has impacted the ecosystem, like Dipani had mentioned. Increase in certain numbers of certain species can have uh, secondary and tertiary effects on the ecosystem and other associated species. Now, interestingly, there are two things that are associated with the increase in numbers of sea turtles, the green sea turtles in the region. One is the increased conservation activities and protection measures that the species have received since they were declared a protected species under the Wildlife Protection Act, which reduced, poaching of the species. And second is also due to the decline in predatory species of sea turtles in the region, which is large sharks. And large sharks have seen a massive decline in numbers all across the oceans of the world, but specifically around Asian waters where uh, you've seen very large declines. Now, the removal of predators as well as increased conservation measures has caused for an, a boom in these herbivores in the Lakshadweep Islands. Now, we started work in Malvan primarily because it was a region which we understood very little, where the primary focus of the most of the communities over there was fisheries, even though this is the same case in both Orissa and Lakshadweep and the Andamans. It was much easier to access uh, the fishers of Malvan because of relatively low conflict with the communities in the past in association with conservation. Now, this actually gave us a very good understanding of what are some of the drivers behind intensive fisheries in the region and what secondary impacts were seen. So we started looking at sea snakes specifically to look at the amount of bycatch that we see and what is happening to the species population. Now, over the years that we monitored the bycatch of sea snakes in Malvan, more than 900 individual snakes were found caught in bycatch across fishing nets. Though 7 species were encountered overall, it was predominantly 2 species, which is Hydrophis curtis and Hydrophis schistosus. Now, the interesting pattern that we did notice, thanks to some past studies that were done by a good colleague and friend of ours, Aaron, was that there seemed to be a shift in the assemblages. The Hydrophis curtis, or the spine-bellied sea snake, which was once the more common type of sea snakes seen in these waters, had declined in numbers in comparison to Hydrophis schistosus. And we also looked at the type of mortality patterns that we see in these species. And individuals that were caught in trawlers had a much faster rate of mortality post capture in comparison to gill nets. And we also did notice that the schistosis was more prone to mortality when caught in fishing nets in comparison to the Hydrophis curtis, the spine-bellied sea snake, was more uh, susceptible to mortality once caught in nets in comparison to schistosis, which is the hook-nosed sea snake, and hence could have caused this shift in assemblage type. Now, this was also seen across different types of fishing gear, where trawl caught snakes were more susceptible to mortality in comparison to the ones caught in gill nets. So, to understand this further, we needed to see what was the cause of this intensive fishing in the region. Now, one of the important facets that most people talk about in fisheries is bycatch. Now, bycatch in very specific terms is all the other types of fish or marine mammal turtles that are caught while fishing, which is not part of the commercial catch, which is the target fishing in the region. What we found out in Malwan was that there was more than a 25 to 30% composition of all catch in that region was this bycatch, or sometimes called trash fish. Now, why now we termed it as BUY, bycatch, was that this is also something that is sold very frequently in the markets. And to understand the economic drivers behind this, we noticed that this trash fish or bycatch was being sold at any rates ranging from very low, that is, when you don't get any catch, to about 10 to 15 rupees per per kilo. And this was also a very important fraction of the total income that was generated to the fishers' uh, livelihood. Now, the biggest driver behind this purchase of bycatch or trash fish was the concept of reduction fisheries, where most of this bycatch was being reduced into byproducts such as fish meal and fish oil, which goes primarily for animal feed, fertilizer, and many other uses. And this doesn't get directly, this doesn't directly go for human consumption. Now, this complicated web of fisheries and demand coming from different regions was the biggest challenge that one needs to address before trying to specifically target protection of charismatic megafauna in that region. This has been the biggest challenge over the years, which has been changing over time, where in the past, most of us went aside saying that we need to protect turtles, so we need to stop fisheries or create an intervention around that. But we really didn't understand this implication of what was driving this excessive fishing in that region. Both the decline of target species, such as most famously the oil sardine in many regions, and other locally consumed species, meant that people were catching anything that they could, which they could reduce and sell for sure to this demand for fish meal and fish oil. There is still a lot we need to understand, and this scenario is common throughout the coast. Especially Andhra is one of the regions with a lot of drivers for the FMFO, the fish meal and fish oil industry, for the poultry and agricultural use. So understanding this marine and coastal landscape would actually mean that we need to understand this entire linkages that is there before making any intervention associated with it. Now, again, I've talked about all of this, but this has been a work of a large team of individuals working all across the coast, and a lot of fantastic field staff who've helped understand these systems, many of them traditional fishers who've told their stories and what they know about the industry as well as how it works. Most of this information is available on our websites, and in the form of, outreach material. You can visit Sea Turtles of India, which is a website that we manage, which has all the information that you want to know about sea turtles. And more recently, we've created a more fun website called aripada.in, which is an exhibition which gathers a lot of stories uh, around sea turtles in the Indian coast. Yeah, and then again, follow us for more stories about this on social media. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Murali. It was a really educational session. And yeah, I think more people are joining once the session is over. Yeah. So yeah, now let's get into the interesting stuff, the discussion and asking questions. So actually, the speakers are also more looking forward to this part of the session, I guess, to clarify your doubts about marine life and conservation. And yeah, as Murali was talking, there is a lot of turtle nesting happening in Andhra Pradesh, and most of that work is being carried out by the forest department here, and a few other stakeholders are also there, like Tree Foundation in Nellore and Srikakulam districts. And in other places, mostly forest department is taking care. In East Godavari district, previously another organization used to take care of it. It is, I think it is East Godavari. Yeah. So let's
No,
get
there was
on.
IGRI Foundation that
IGRI
was there.
Foundation. Yeah, there used to be IGRI Foundation. Now they are not functional anymore. So
And
they used
around
to.
Vizag, there's VSPCA that is.
Yeah, now VSPCA is not taking care anymore. Right now,
Okay.
only forest department is directly doing the work.
All right.
So yeah. So when it comes to other things like marine mammals and etc., not much work has started here. That's why Dipani wants to help us here. So with her marine mammals network. So hopefully, if we have more people like you who are joining this, we can form a network in Andhra Pradesh also with the help of Dipani, and we can give more data on strandings or beachings of marine mammals. We also have two more veterinarian friends who are ready to help us with it, and Dipani is happy to train them also. So more work could be done here on that part. And our team has done a little reconnaissance on sharks and ray catches here. So we would like to start some project on it too shortly. So hopefully all of this collaboration and help from all you guys. And yeah, as you guys have learned a lot in these presentations, it's time to ask questions about it. So if you guys have any questions about the presentations or marine conservation in general, you can shoot them out, and we have two experts here who are ready to explain about those things.
So, yeah, I recommend. Should I try to
Yeah.
respond? Yeah.
Go ahead, Dipan.
So it's not. I mean, even Murli will be able to pitch in here because he has experience from Lakshadweep, if I'm not mistaken. But seagrass restoration, like the way we do forest restoration, ecological restoration inland, is not very easy because the areas will really need to be kept safe from all kind of anthropogenic pressures. Number one, right? So in Lakshadweep, if they're trying to do it, it's the green. He told you about the green sea turtles and the cascade over there. There are just too many turtles, and they are just eating up the sea grass. So it's not just the humans. It's this imbalance that has happened. So in Lakshadweep, what they're trying right now is they've got cages inside which they've tried to transplant seagrass. Saplings or what, but that and those things are succeeding in the level that it's an experiment. They're seeing how quickly it depends on the nutrients in the water. Yeah, it's not just put grass in water and water it like we do on land and it will grow. Over there, it depends a lot on light, on the weather conditions, on currents, and all this. We all are also trying to Kalpapanar and Park Bay. They are trying to at least map the whole distribution of seagrass and then try and find areas where they can protect them so that they are not damaged by trawler. The main problem there is drawbacks. So it's more time consuming and more complicated than doing it on land. That's all. But yeah, it cannot be cultured the way we can culture things on land. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you. And the thing is, there are attempts to do this. It's not as if there isn't a focus on seagrass restoration. Um, the main issue again over there is, where do we go and do this? See, the thing is, when we go on most of these restoration drives, uh, it shouldn't be so ill planned that we need to do this everywhere. Like mangrove plantation is one very good example for this, because in many cases people have decided that we'll plant mangroves anywhere and everywhere without consent or discussion even with the coastal communities on where it needs to be done, on whether it is something that they need to be associated with. So I think the way that it needs to be done, there are research organizations doing it to tell that okay, it can be done and this is what you need to do, but to actually follow it through on ground and to make it a success story, we need a very close association with the communities there on what they see is required and can be done. Like for example, in Lakshadweep, one of the solutions people said to restore seagrass in the area was kill the green turtles. That isn't really a solution, as in it could be a solution, but
Or bring back the sharks.
Or bring back the sharks. So that's so it isn't as easy as saying that we'll go plant it and we will fix the problem. That isn't fixing the problem. That's just putting like a band-aid on a fracture. You really need to fix the system on the whole. And like I showed you, like when you have such a complicated web of association with marine species, you can't have quick fix solutions saying that we will restore it and things will get back in order.
And I cannot stress enough what the point Murali just made, that this whole blue economy thing that has come into our picture, let's plant trees so that we can save ourselves from climate change. And the same thing let's do in the sea. Let's go plant mangroves and seagrasses everywhere, and to hell with all the other ecologies and ecosystems that exist there. Forget the fact that the communities also may not want to change their ecologies and ecosystems. So it shouldn't be this industrial approach to dealing with climate change is something I don't endorse at all.
Yeah. Yes, and as in we can't again make these solutions so standalone when we want. There's also a demand to build a port across every 40 kilometers of Indian coastline. Now we can't have both. Again, the talk over here is to not say that we should not have any ports. Ports should exist. They're very important for the country and a lot of different things. It's to make sure that existing ports function to its best capacity and reduce impacts, instead of saying that we'll just start another new one and let that do it in its own way. So yeah, I think we shouldn't lose our focus over there by saying that we will fix it with these small solutions.
I don't know, unless CMLRE is involved in that. I don't think NCPS or TF or what is it, Tata Institute is doing any of this stuff for seagrass, from what I know. Maybe AIMS is doing it in Australia. The AIMS in Australia might be doing it, but not in India. Not using any company.
As the seagrasses topic has come up, I don't think any mapping work on seagrasses has been done in Andhra Pradesh coast, right? I couldn't find any sources for it.
Do we have seagrasses on the Andhra coast model?
That's what I don't know. There's no study done, I guess. So.
You should check out the trawlers. If they're bringing any seagrass from close to shore, then you might know something.
Exactly. When I asked some locals, they were saying that they have seagrasses in a large lagoon in East Godavari.
Yeah, that's
I'm not sure.
That is possible, like within
There
the
is two,
lagoon.
three species they are telling, but I'll have to check out when I go there. But still, I think there is no proper mapping or at least any survey done to know about
Te-
seagrasses in Andhra Pradesh. And
Technically,
yeah,
Yeah.
there is
I've seen
there is a
some.
seagrass map of India. That
Okay,
uh, NCSCM has maps of all important coastal and
okay,
marine
okay,
areas in the country, but
okay.
it isn't freely available. You can try contacting them to see whether
Sure, sure,
uh,
sure,
they
definitely.
can share
But
any
as you were
information.
talking about turtles, we have observed a couple of green sea turtles washed ashore in Andhra. Even in Vizag, we have observed 4 months ago.
Hmm.
We saw green sea turtle dead. So yeah,
Hmm.
and also there was nesting of them, a couple of them in East Godavari, right? A year or two ago.
I'm not sure if it is confirmed nesting records of green turtles anywhere on the east coast, because I do know
Sure.
that they're found quite frequently
Okay, okay.
all over the east coast, especially like juveniles. Because
Hmm.
the juveniles and subadults, they don't follow very fixed migratory routes as far as I know, like
Hmm.
breeding adults. So you actually
Okay.
find strays all over.
Okay,
Uh,
okay, got it.
so you might find one or two, but they're just I would call them vagrants rather than you know
Got it, got it.
a
So
regular population.
okay, okay. Same could be for hawksbill turtle. Like I've
Yes.
seen a 4 month old one which washed ashore and it survived, but still it had a damaged shell.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Well, sea turtles, you can find them almost everywhere.
yeah, that's one.
Like tropical waters, like some might get. Actually,
So
many
any
marine mammals also can be found technically anywhere. You'll find vagrant records, but that doesn't
yeah, and yeah,
mean.
I got a doubt from your map. So in Andhra Pradesh coast, there was no blue indication or red indication or any indication in most of the part.
There's no
So
data. Any data we put it on the world
yeah, exactly.
atlas.
Yeah, so yeah,
We have to
that's really sad.
there's this gap between Orissa and Tamil Nadu. Huge gap
Yeah.
there. Yeah. Even though this UNDP project people had collected data, it was mainly stranding data. What was it?
Hmm.
Something, no, what was it? That UNDP funded foundation. Yeah. It's
Okay.
mainly stranding data. There has been no real live sighting data.
Okay. Okay. So any more questions from the participants? One person is asking. We have a lot of people who said they're interested and not speaking up.
Yeah.
You can write to us directly.
Yeah, you
You
can
can
write
write
to them.
only.
Yeah,
You can
exactly.
you can write to us personally as well.
Yeah,
So the
I'll share you their
aggregation,
email IDs.
yeah,
Can I text them here?
Yeah.
yeah,
Only there's a question for you on agricultural aggregation.
yeah.
Okay.
So it's we take out boats and conduct uh, contracts in the offshore waters in fixed routes. So that way, it is repeatable and comparable across years. So it's not just random boat trips, but we follow like specific uh, patterns. So and we do it every month, and we've been doing it for the last 8-10 years. So yeah, that's how we understood how the aggregation patterns shift. And I think there's a question for you, Dipani.
So if you're talking, yeah, honey. If you're talking about marine mammal species, then what you see in the photograph is Irrawaddy dolphins, Orcana brevirostris. But there are many other species in Chilka that are also in threat, or actually we've lost a few species of fish from the waters after the new seamouth was made 20 years ago and all that. So, but if you're talking about Irrawaddy dolphins, then the best way to restore them is to just keep the system in a good shape, let seawater come in and fresh water come in, and that's fine. And of course, to manage the fisheries and allow them to move around in Chilka. So there's a whole thesis on that. Cordaly Dilema has also done some very good research, and I did some very basic stuff before her. So the conservation really, and it has to involve the fishing community, the local people, because they don't really want to kill dolphins at all. They actually feel bad if a dolphin is caught in their net. They consider it to be blessing from God and so on and so forth. They've been living with the dolphins ever since they were there. People remember dolphins from the time they were there, right? So they don't want to kill the dolphins, so we don't have that issue. We do have a problem of tourist boats chasing dolphins, but luckily that happens in a very small area. It's core area for the dolphins, but it's quite intense. So I think when it comes to conservation technique, there's only one thing that really works, and that is long-term presence of people who can spend long hours with local communities. Um, that is the only way to conservation. And sadly, many of us we do a PhD, then we leave. So that doesn't amount to any kind of conservation, only science. Can you stratify fishing to maintain balance, fishing on different heights seasonally or with some other measures? Only you want to go for that?
I think both of us can answer that. I'm telling you, there are really good guidelines of better fishery that exists. Whether it is put in practice on ground is a different thing. Now, the drivers behind that are also very different. Now, something like trawling itself, I would say, you hear it quite often, the trawling. As a technology developed for a specific type of fishery in a specific type of region. The problem is when it doesn't happen there. Especially in tropical waters, if you start trawling near shore is when you have the problem. Deep trawling conducted in a good fashion can give good yields and harvests with lesser impacts. Now, same goes with light fishing, different fishing gear and things. Now, the problems that you would see in the coast of Andhra would be very different from Gujarat because fisheries again are state mandates. Different states have different types of subsidies that are given to fishermen. The requirement of diesel and running cost of a fishing operations are really high. A single trawl trip to go out would cost a few lakhs. That's how much it costs for a single trawl trip to go out to catch fish. They have to break even from beyond what is being put in, what is being sold, and that is again shared across multiple people. So,
very complex.
It's very complex. And a lot of talks that happen about reducing intensive fishing come largely from the European fisheries and other fisheries globally. It cannot be translated to what is seen in much smaller fishing nations like India and Southeast Asia. Yes, it is being increased in many fashions, but it is driven because the profits that come in from fisheries to actual individual fishers is really low. You would imagine that people exploiting such a market are making lots of money. There are people making money. Those are the large boat owners. The actual fishermen themselves are not doing so well. So I think, Dipani, do you want to add anything?
In terms of this question itself, like fishermen already have different kind of fishing methods in different seasons depending on what they wish to target. They carry different kinds of gears with them, and depending on what they find, they use it. Like even for trawling, there is mid-level trawling, bottom trawling. They do it. They already do this. But I think your question might be about whether the solution is spatial and temporal closures or spatial and temporal, protocols in place for different seasons and things like that, which on paper is perfect as long as the community wants to do it. So it all boils down to communities, and sometimes I feel when we are low and down and we're like, oh God, there's no hope, we sometimes think it is the combination of climate, weather, and the fact that fishermen themselves don't want to take up the risk of going fishing because they don't know what they're going to get in return. And that is kind of reducing the intensity of fishing in certain areas. So when I travel all along the West Coast every year, and last year I saw that by March or early April, all the Karwar fishing vessels were already in for Seeners. They were not out because they just can't bear the expense of going out right now that year. It is not enough to catch. So there is this, I don't know what in theory, there must be something where your own activities are kind of stopping you from going out and intensely fishing for a small period of time. And this small period of time is the hope that they have. Whether it's bad monsoon or cyclone or whatever, these are the pockets of time that the oceans actually have to revive themselves. Sometimes this is where I end up, because thinking of managing our fishing communities by top-down policy, I don't see any hope in that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think most fishing communities are very well aware of the decline in
Yeah.
quality, habitat, and everything. They're driven to intensive fisheries because of largely income. There is a huge demand for these for this everywhere, and you know, again, they're trying to make a livelihood over here. So I am, for one, against any kind of bans as such. Good management can be done, but it can't be top down, like Dipani says. It really needs to come in from, the fishing community, strengthening their unions, improving communication. And I have talked about this to Pranav before. Like, most information about, all these marine species, you can get it from the communities themselves. They are
True.
very well aware of, where different species breed, during which month, migratory patterns. We still haven't, you know, unraveled many of those questions. And it doesn't need a scientist, yeah, to come and tell all of these things. A scientist or a conservationist, like, you can get all this information from them.
They know so much already.
Yeah. I think the challenge over here is to get more people to engage constantly to understand this.
Yeah.
Most conservation talks, when they talk about marine systems or, important species, they will say, the biggest threat to species is fishing. And I completely disagree. I agree there is a threat, but the threat, as Dipani said, people don't want to kill marine mammals or turtles or snakes. It is what you call incidental bites.
Turtles
But,
are they
you know,
eat.
the,
So there are some communities that eat dogs even now. They are caught certain
yeah,
only, not the whales. The whales are specific. Turtles,
I do.
things like that. Like sure, Murli.
No, I'm sure.
Karnataka, yes,
No, no, I'm sure that,
but not.
uh, not large scale. I still, in fact, I don't think it's a problem as well.
Yeah.
All of the turtles, there are 400,000 nesting turtles in one nesting beach in Orissa. Constantly, more than 5 to 10,000 turtles wash ashore dead on the coast of Orissa since 90s.
Yeah.
It hasn't caused an impact on their population.
Mm.
So this again could be cascading effects to reduced
Predators.
predators in the ocean and increased conservation. Like, everywhere across the coast, we have hatcheries for turtles which are releasing hatchlings
That's
with
also a
zero
fashion.
threats to them.
It's a fashion.
So,
It's like plant mangroves, plant trees, and now make nests. Every turtle that nests, you have to take out the eggs, and no matter whether the nest can naturally actually do what it has to do. I mean, sorry,
exactly.
just coming out
Yeah,
of my mouth, but I don't understand
yeah, I
these
also
trends.
felt like why to protect all those nests. If you can reduce the anthropogenic factors that affect them, that's good enough. Because there are jackals that have been eating them from thousands of years, and there have been other animals that have been digging and eating those eggs. So if you protect every nest over there, then you are actually messing up with the local ecology. I feel if you reduce
Absolutely.
the anthropogenic effect, that's good enough, I guess.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
don't have to take out every nest from everywhere and go
exactly.
and put it
I
in a
think you
hatchery.
both are also running out of time.
I think
So,
we need to, yeah.
who all
Yeah.
are attending here? You already have emails of Dipani and Murali. You can email them if you have any questions, and they are patient enough to answer to you guys. And thank you very much, Murali and Dipani,
Thank
for
you.
being here. And I think
Thank
you
you,
have
Pranav.
inspired more than 20 people over here. And hopefully they'll contribute something for conservation and better sustainable fisheries in future. Let's
Thank
hope.
you, everyone.
Thank you very
Take
much.
care.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
And if everyone switches on their cameras, we can take a group screenshot and leave.
Okay.
So who is okay with switching on their front cams? Please do if you are. Yeah. Cool. Let's take a group photo. Cool. We have 70
Okay.
of us. Yeah, cool. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
guys. It was an
Bye-bye.
great
Good luck.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.